Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for sticking around and joining us for the next session where we'll be looking at the network edge. Before we get started, of course, just want to say thank you to our sponsors that make this all possible. Without them, we wouldn't be here today and we wouldn't be able to kind of pull this together for you. So thank you to all of them. So I'd like to introduce the next panel, which is the network edge in Asia. Who's driving, who's paying? We're going to look at business models and everything involved within that. We've got quite a diverse panel, kind of different definitions of edge, which I think is a good place to always start. So I'll hand over to your moderator, Thomas Kessler, and invite everyone to take their place on the stage.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We took the shortcut.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot for having us today. And gentlemen, thank you very much to every one of you to be here today. Maybe we start with a very quick introduction. So if you could just say a few words about what excites you about our topic today, about edge computing. And also maybe throw in a little bit what our company is doing and why you're actually here today. Maybe Desmond, if you just want to start because you sit right next to me.
Okay. Good to be the first one. Hello, my name is Xiaomen. I'm from DC Connect, right? What DC Connect do is we run a network of over 1,000 POPs running an SDN network. And we build our POP, we provide backbone to build this POP through a platform, through a portal that we developed so that we can offer services like point-to-point layer 2 services between these data center and data centers, the DCI stuff, data center to cloud, cloud to cloud, and all that sort of things. So we are sort of a middle mile provider from the perspective of the edge networking, because we are not to the edge, but we are providing some core to the edges side, so we provide that middle miles. Now, I can continue this discussion later on when I got a chance, but I think we all understand edge differently. Everyone have their own view about edge. Maybe through this discussion, we can discuss a bit more about what's the perspective everyone have that got in mind, actually what do you mean by edge and how that edge actually impact your business in terms of business model and all that. So we'll be interested to have this sort of discussion today.
Maybe on.
Thank you. My name's John Eves. I'm the founder and CEO of Edge Centers. We are a digital infrastructure provider in Australia, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, recently also opening in Los Angeles. So we specialize in true edge as such, as we operate our facilities in locations where digital infrastructure didn't previously exist. So in Thailand, we're in Khon Kaen, Phuket, and Chiang Mai, away from Bangkok. Indonesia, we're in Denpasar. We're also in Batam, Philippines, Luzon, Davao, and Cebu. Malaysia is Johor, KL, and Penang. So yeah, very lucky. Forward to speaking on this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Lee. I'm the Managing Director for Marketing Corporate Development for EdgeConneX, based out here in Singapore. EdgeConneX, as you may or may not know, is a global data center service provider. We've got data centers in about 50 markets globally. The Asia office was set up about just a little bit more than a year ago, and since then, we've entered into multiple markets, including a very large joint venture across India, a recent announcement of a joint venture in Philippines, acquisition of a data center, a reputable data center partner, an organization in Jakarta, and soon, hopefully, if I'm successful in my role, we'll be announcing a few more entrances into markets, tier 1 markets like Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. So really looking forward to this session today, and thank you for having me.
Eddie?
Hello. Hi guys, good afternoon, and thanks for having me as well. Eddie, kind of based out of Singapore, running the engagement with the telco networks, NSPs we call it, network service providers in APAC. Basically, again, Equinix, I hope you guys have an idea of what Equinix does. across 70 metros, 250 plus minus data centers across the world. In APAC alone, we prepare probably about 13 metros, 50 odd facilities across APAC. And again, I'm really excited about getting engaged in this conversation. As everyone is going through the transformation, Equinix is doing the same thing as well. Recently, we have two business units set up. One is digital services, and the other is data center. So digital services, again, is around the edge, around the metal stuff that we are doing. So going to have fun. Thanks.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ravi, and I'm the head of international business for HGC Global Communications, a fixed network operator based out of Hong Kong. I run the international business. We have been known in the Asia space for international connectivity as a carriers network since the 2000s. And we transformed that network eventually to new users, for example, the hyperscalers and now, the internet economies. As an evolution of these locations and experience and depth that we have developed, we have also acquired local licenses and built new solutions and platform. We call it EdgeX. It's essentially a one-stop shop solution which consists of reach of eyeball, network, hosting, with partnership with data centers and also network service provider to help reduce the pain points for app companies and OTTs to reach new locations which are non-traditional in space and location-wise. So I'm very glad to be, given the choice to be on the panel today, and I hope we can exchange some good ideas of how we can actually transform ASEAN space for edge connectivity, as we really need this pretty much for the development of the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And I think that gives me a good starting point, because when we discuss about edge, let's look at, for the starters, on the demand, on the use cases. So all your companies do substantial investments into edge. So where do you see the actual driver? What drives the use cases today? And maybe also, what do you see coming tomorrow? So what is really what drives the demand that lets us invest into edge infrastructure? Maybe, John, if you might want to start.
So for us, I think we'll all acknowledge that the edge is still coming. We're still very much ahead of the curve in relation to what the true edge use cases are, and it's very much for us around placing the infrastructure where the requirement's going to be. So if you look at Thailand, there's 30 data centers, commercial ones, and they're all in Bangkok, where you've got 10 million people, but outside of that, where the other 60 million live, there's no digital infrastructure. So for us, building in Chiang Mai, which is a population of 1.5 million people, was our first location and our drivers. That's where the customers are, and that's inevitably where a lot of the digital infrastructure players and enterprises are as well. So at the moment, where they all have a remote arm, we are kind of just moving the infrastructure closer to the eyeballs for when the use case is more relevant.
That would be, as you said, Bangkok, Thailand as an example. But how is this, for instance, in Hong Kong, Ravi, when you look from that perspective?
Well, I think Hong Kong, as far as edge is concerned, is the distance-wise, you can probably cover Hong Kong in about 1 hour's drive or less than an hour's drive. So it may not be the best example for me to illustrate, but we see that the drivers for edge requirements is a push and pull. For the hyperscalers and also for the smaller players, it's the reach and that eyeball, as what he said, and I completely agree. For the big guys, they know what they want to do and what they want to achieve. But for the tier 2 players or smaller players, they need for us to show them the way and create and open up new markets. For example, in Malaysia, all of the mobile eyeball backhauls were connected back to Malaysia IX in KL. But if we can open up new frontiers in Penang, or in Johor, or in Kuantan, you then create a new outlet. And it would take time to actually become an exchange point. But you need to create that opportunity, co-location, and reach for eyeballs to come together in that location, diversify the centralization of the data, and that's how the evolution takes place. So use cases, there are always available, but to design it and to come to a stage where the use cases could actually work will take time. But in the nearest horizon, what I can say is gaming. Definitely there is a need to balance between two parties playing together. So we see that as the most closest use case today.
Would you see differences across the world if we look, for instance, developing or emerging markets versus markets like Singapore, for instance, or the US, or also when you look a bit Asia Pacific versus Europe versus Americas? So where do you see differences, or is this all the same? There we go. Maybe Sam?
Well, I can, so thanks for the question. Then, basically, I think for us, it's all down to what Shaman said earlier about the age definition. I think for us, age is where, we have all the aggregated, large metros, and large metros can be, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore, London, anywhere else. And that's where everyone comes together. You have guys on this side of the world where we look into, aggregated, what does aggregated mean? Where all the private public IT infrastructure sits, where all the NSPs and the providers are already there. So that interconnection and that traffic transfer between back and forth is be a lot. And that's where we define age, and that's where we need to be. And at that age is where we feel the monetization is going to be the largest. You have the lowest investment where you get into the place where everyone is hanging out with, and not at the remote places where there's not much data transflow. So again, I think it's down to the fact that where you define age. And that's where, to us, is very important to us, the age. Yeah.
I'd like to add on this as well. Yeah, you're talking about how you understand the edge, right? As I mentioned earlier, I mean, there are, to one extreme, you're talking about the embedded edge. You have everything right in a car, right? Everything processing power is in the chip in the car. This is one kind of edge form. But for us, if we're talking about connectivity, we're talking about a core data center and then all the other edge data centers around. Then we're talking about the processing power in all the different edge data centers. Now, for us, I mean, we work with some partners that they are more concerned about how you structure the network topology. How is the best way, the most effective way to pass data to the cloud and off the cloud? Because they know that the idea of data gravity, there's a cost to put data to the cloud, but it costs you a lot to get the data back from the cloud. So that is something that has always been a dilemma, right? We want everything to stay in the cloud for some reason, right? Because maybe the data sovereignty reason, or you have to keep it in somewhere else. But in some cases, you don't want to put too much data down because it will cost you a lot of money. So this is a way of how you design the best network infrastructure in order to fulfill and balance all the different cost factor and the network efficiency and all that. So that probably will be something that we need to consider.
Sam?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add and mirror a lot of the points of the panelists here. But I think what's quite interesting is, so EdgeConnect has been building out the edge for more than 10 years. And what's happened over the past couple of years, it's quite interesting because there is a very big shift in the way that data is being transferred. So the old model is the core holds the data, then you use these metro edge sites to distribute that data. So it was unidirectional. It was only going one way. But what's happened over the past couple of years, particularly during the pandemic with everyone staying at home, people are gaming, they're streaming, they're buying, or even something simple as TikTok, right? Content is being generated at the edge. Right? So what's happening now, it's going bidirectional. It's going both ways. And during the pandemic, I'm sure everybody heard, is that there was a huge strain on these edge sites because the amount of data transfer that was occurring, being distributed, that was all being picked up by these edge data center locations and less from the core. And so kind of to answer your question about the difference between, say, a mature market versus an emerging one, I think the difference is that when you have a more established market, you have a more decentralized infrastructure of how that data exchanges. And so edge could be, various different locations. Like if you take Tokyo, for example, yes, there are some core locations where you would consider them to be edge, but you've got very distinct markets where multiple edges occur because you have the scale, right? You have 100 megawatt data center submarkets that can handle, generate, store, compute, and distribute all of that data. When you're talking about some of the less developed markets, again, when you have a much smaller presence, a cloud presence, like say Malaysia, for example, although all of the cloud providers have committed to that market, they have not committed to a huge amount of capacity in the way that they would have, say, in Sydney, Singapore, or Hong Kong. And so because of that, the edge is concentrated to very few locations around Malaysia, and typically happens to be KL, right, where the IX is. And so I think what we'll see over the course of the next few years is as the markets develop and as the cloud demand pushes providers like us to go into markets, as you mentioned, not just your Bangkoks, but the Chiang Mai's and the even Phukets of the world. You'll not only see data center infrastructure start to develop in terms of data center facilities, you'll see a lot more fiber connectivity, international submarine cable capacity. And as that ecosystem grows, we can anticipate, again, in preparation for that, the main point, which is that bi-directional data that is starting to occur in all of these different markets.
And I think you made an important point, which is the ecosystem which we need. So it's not just only the edge data center we need the connectivity, we need governments to support. So how do you, we're a bit on the panel today looking at data centers. We don't have someone from hyperscalers or OTTs here today, but from your point of view, if you look at the ecosystem, who is in the end driving the build out? Is it you with your companies? Is it more the demand coming from the hyperscalers or the OTTs? And how do you how do you work together with them? How do you build these ecosystems? I see Ravi is nodding, so maybe he has a point.
Well, it's a very diverse dynamics. Obviously, there are a couple of drivers. The obvious ones are the hyperscalers, and if you take in a span of 100%, 70% of the traffic goes to some of the major players. So they tend to have ability to shape, and they use the power of the content that they have to bring or break the monopoly of the federalization of the data into locations which are non-conventional. So if one of the big guys built a data center close to a cable landing station and the data is away from, let's say, Bangkok, the data will gravitate, or the local eyeball will gravitate to the site, because now instead of the MNO federalizing the data back to Bangkok, they may, because of 5G, decentralize to Songkla, to Satun, and connect, and thereby, as an ecosystem, they become one of the power movers to reshape, right? So this is one driver. Second is the amount of data that is consumed in a vast location like Indonesia, where you have many islands. Also, because of more consumption of data, it doesn't make sense for you to backhaul that data back to Jakarta and then switch it back. The cost of data and the cloud, it becomes just enormously expensive. So then the nature of the data of the MNOs to open up local peerings, then this become also a driver to change the dynamics of the traffic. So I see the push-pull is from the external content, and also to a certain extent I see the government legislation also helping out in the digitalization of the government facilities and infra, local government opening up to put up local nodes, and thereby, or even encouraging smaller IXs to operate. So this will help open new eyeball reach closer and closer, and thereby attracting investors like data centers and edge connects equivalents to put up facilities 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt, and these become new babies for edge. That's how I would say the drivers are.
Yeah, again, I just agree with Ravi quite a bit there. And I had lunch with OTT yesterday as well, and we're down to this bit. I was telling them about, hey, who is driving this demand? And obviously, those guys with big, huge video streams coming around. And then the next question, who's going to pay for it? It's back to the point where, there's always this tug of war between the OTT and the service provider, right? You had that huge investment, but it came around and, well, not paying much, and tap on that, the huge infra. Well, again, I think down to what we are doing on the Equinix side is addressing that, not just on the who is driving that, but the technology that's driving it, the 5G IoT. We see a lot of NLP, natural language processing, computer vision kind of stuff that's going on. Again, that's where we set up, how do we monetize this and get from the device? Before 5G, before IoT, there wasn't much that you can do over Wi-Fi. You can't transfer huge number of devices across, you can't have video surveillance as well, right? To get that data transferred to the end of the application. So what we do is work with the providers. We have that infrastructure in place to enable that, movement from here to there easily. And latency, user experience is usually what drives in the end. All the consumers are getting very smart nowadays. They're demanding a lot more. They want everything fast and clear and best. So I think that's what we see driving. And digital services on the edge side is exactly what we're trying to address. You don't have to pay up front. It's kind of OPEX stuff that we're trying to do right here to address that demand there.
Other thoughts?
Well, so what we're seeing is a change in also the power consumption. So I think what Ravi said is absolutely right. You look at mist coming in, you've got Satoon into Marib, back down into 2 hours in Singapore. The global connectivity and border crossings is going to become absolute. But what we're also now seeing is the hyperscalers have changed their consumption ways, whereas in a hyperscale facility, you can be 8 to 15 kilowatts a rack. At the edge, a wavelength or an outpost can be 30 kilowatts a rack, and now you've got TikTok, who have just produced 200 kilowatts per rack. So they'll do 4 racks, 800 kilowatts, and that's their deployment now. And they want that everywhere. And it's like, well, we can't do that. Because literally, you're now taking what would have been an established, call it a 100-rack facility at 8 kilowatts. It's 4 racks, right? And then that's it. All your customers gone, and you're like, well, I need to charge you 80 racks. And they're like, no, I'm only paying for 4. And I just want to pay this. So I think they're kind of, the customer, the hyperscalers are getting smarter. The technology's getting more dense. Obviously, we are still trying to work out where we go for these facilities. And again, going back to that, I think the convergence between edge cable landing stations will become a thing of the future. You'll see a lot more availability for capabilities next to landing stations as we start, especially moving around Asia as we get more cables.
How do you see the regulatory environment here, especially here in Asia? Is that something where you think everything is already clear? We had a discussion a bit about the moratorium before in the previous panel. So how do you see that developing? Is that holding us back, or is there something which you see that would support us in future if changes would occur from that side? So how do your companies deal with the regulatory environment?
I'll start with that one as we're fresh off the ground here. It's all in draft. We launch in Vietnam next Friday. It's all up and running. It's powered, and apparently we need a cloud license, and we need a service provider license, and we need a network license, and we need a port license, and we need a co-location license. But then when we go to the lawyers say, no, it's not required yet. It's draft. So it's this chicken and egg. So I can build a data center. I can operate a data center without a license. But at some point, I need to be aware that there could be a license, but no one knows what the license looks like. So it's everywhere we've had. So we had the same in Thailand. In Thailand, we just had to agree that our data would remain, any Thai resident data would remain in Thailand. Malaysia, exactly the same. So we just have to agree that a Malaysian resident data would remain in. And the rest of the countries, it's just draft. So I think, yeah, it's not the pressure's coming, but I don't think they can define it yet. So therefore, it's still very grey.
How big do you see the risk of that for the business in the end?
Can't let it stop you. I think it's, if you go to an audit committee, you highlight the risk and everybody in the room just says accepted. It's like, what do we do? Stop because it's in draft? Do we wait? What is the legal feedback on this? Yes, it could be implemented. were you already established? What was the time frame you were established? If you've been going for 3 years, it's very unlikely they're going to try and retrospectively audit you on things prior.
Eddie, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think the regulatory challenge it is a daunting task, and I would say, especially in ASEAN, there is no coherence in that. Data sovereignty also plays a part, even though we are 50 kilometers or less away between two countries. In ASEAN, for example, Malaysia, Singapore, we have a lot of challenges in order for us to overcome each country's requirement, and thereby then it poses a challenge. What could be rolled out within 12 months will take at least 24, if not 36, if not, it's still in draft stage of how to sort it out. So this is stopping inter-country data exchange and how the decision making is done. For the big boys, it's a challenge. For the smaller guys, it's even a bigger challenge. And I would say, like, how we navigate, we have our HX network proposition and eyeball. We take time and making sure that we have enough eyeball in Vietnam, enough eyeballs in Bangkok or in Laos to be able to say to the Spotify or to a Riot game that we got your game sorted in this country, but these are what you need to be aware of, and then they make their own decision, because at the end of the day, the content belongs to them. That is how we advise them. But it is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. But it also, of course, represents opportunities. In every scenarios, we see that, for example, there are cables that are landing in Songkla and Satun, but if you can actually data exchange that 50 kilometers down, you could do that in Kedah, in Perlis, for example, which is on the Malaysia side, and pang, put it back to Thailand. So there's a lot of loopholes and opportunity. Not the most ideal, but that's how ASEAN is at the moment. It's work in progress.
Yeah, I think they're very good points. And if we look a bit more into challenges, so regulatory obviously is one, but we've just learned, so this can be overcome, or at least we don't see it as a big risk. What do we see as very big risks when it comes to edge computing, to your investments, your investment committees? So what drives them and what keeps them awake at night? Maybe
I would add, so obviously, at least from a data center service provider's perspective, what we do is infrastructure. It's digital infrastructure, which means the ROI is a very long-term payback period. And so when you have that, and similar to our customers as well, when they, particular hyperscale deployment, minimum 5 to 10 megawatts at one time, we may be building a 50 megawatt data center with a capital value of, say, $600-700 million. But then our customers are then subsequently not only investing in a commercial contract with us, they are then deploying all of their infrastructure, their hardware, staffing, making investments on the business cloud side. So that value becomes very big. And so until you have a stabilized government where those risks, business risk, operating costs, and exposure to data sovereignty laws, until those are at least clear, and so that you can establish what your risk is, it will continue to be a very difficult long-term investment for organizations to make. And so when you look at, one perfect example I like to use is data sovereignty. There is a direct correlation between data center development from an international perspective and clear data sovereignty laws. When you look at a market like Singapore, Singapore is probably world leading in terms of digital data management, sovereignty laws, and regulations around financial services. It laid a very clear roadmap as to what you had to do and what you didn't have to do. And because of that, although it's an expensive place to build, it's probably one of the most expensive electricity markets in the world per kilowatt hour. Why have you seen so much development in the data center market? Well, it's because everything was clear. And as long as a risk is clear, you can price it, come up with a commercial model, and then you're able to provide that and secure that digital infrastructure for a very long time. So I do think, coming back to your main point, I think as long as governments have the support to not only enhance and build out that digital infrastructure and digital economies, having clear laws and regulations around operations and risks and laws around that, that's fundamental to building that digital economy.
I think one thing I would like to add is, one way for us to mitigate the risk of the investment is by forming partnership. That is very common from my perspective because we just announced a partnership with GDS, the data center, and one of the biggest in Asia. We help them to do the network automations, and they provide the facilities in Asia. They got over 100 facilities around here, but we help them in terms of doing the network automation side of it. And for them, is it a safe investment because we provide technology and expertise on that. They provide the network resources. And so this is one way for the partnership. Another partnership is the kind of partnership that we work with HGC actually. So we provide the software automation project. They provide the backbone resources, right, to connect the Southeast Asia with a strategic hub together. And then we do some sort of revenue sharing business at the end of the day. So that leverage both resources without taking too much a risk into a new business ventures, which are risky, right? So that's the sort of ideas that we will use. Forming partnership will be the trend. I think everyone contribute their own resources. You have resources, you have facility, you have network, I have software, I have expertise. So we contribute and form this alliance to make it work.
Thank you. Eddie? Maybe.
Yeah, just to John's point as well, earlier I think he kind of ran through the whole list of all the licensing that you need to acquire. Likewise, for anyone to set up a data center space, not just that, you have to look at the land as well. Are you buying the land that is legal? There are a lot of partners coming after you that offering the land, and that across all the infrastructure you need to set up. The telecom license as well. We have a bit of brush in China, the way we operate. We acquired a company in GPX in India. So I think that kind of address and help us with some of the regulatory get around it. In Africa as well, we have main one out of Nigeria, Cameroon. So that kind of get us around some of the regulatory constraint. You guys probably heard about our announcement in Jakarta recently. So that will be in 2024, be ready. Again, that's something that we are very concerned about, but there's a big team there is kind of looking into all the legal aspects of the setup. And that's to the point, there is a big risk, right, for anyone who wants to set up a shop. Do they want to go in and plug in all the CAPEX, or they just want to look at, I'll have a POC, I'll get in some OPEX model. Let's try to address that for them, right, where you don't have to pay up everything else, it's kind of pay as you go kind of model where you get in there, tap on the edge, tap on the bare metal, and just kind of test it out before you plug in big time. And we have tons of use cases around those. But again, I think Singapore is kind of pushing everybody out from here. So we just got to explore the Johor, explore the Batam, explore the region around here. So yeah, good luck to all of us. Thanks.
Yeah, for us, I think, we've always partnered people from different ecosystems, like what Shimon has mentioned, even at the network side. So we have an EdgeX platform that basically we put a couple of things together into a box, and we work with data centers, and we would like to populate it as much as possible in the planet, as much as we can. But we cannot have the scale to do so. So we work with like-minded people who have that capability and put the software on top or the network on top. In some markets, like in the Philippines, we took a calculated step. It's multi-million-dollar investment of fiber because we believe on the shared network philosophy, and we somehow have made some success, and we will be able to connect close to 40 data centers by next year, October, on a shared network philosophy in non-competing with the local telcos. So we have to find, there's no one size fit all. We have to find the market and be able to manage that risk and go deep and hopefully democratize that market and make more edge available for John and for Sam to place their edge boxes in Cebu or in Zamboanga City. Hopefully, that's what I think we would like to do and aspire to do.
And that will bring me to the question, how, I mean, in the major cities and even in the countries we've discussed, in the emerging markets like Bangkok, like Hanoi, Vietnam, Indonesia, Jakarta, there the business case is relatively clear. But if you go into the smaller countries, tier 2, cities, tier 2 or tier 3, Chiang Mai we discussed, how do you actually manage the business case? How does that work in the end, that this still pays off when you have not just only a smaller population, but also much smaller ARPU in those areas in the city, in the country?
Partners. So Ravi doesn't know, but maybe he does, but he's my supplier in Hong Kong. So HDC supplies me in Fanling. In Thailand, we partnered with Interlink, so a very good friend of his, Mr. Suat, he supports us throughout the entire country. So there's no way as a foreign investor into an Asian country where we're going to come and put our flag and think, right, we're here, come buy space from me. Without an ecosystem, without partnering with the local telcos, so, you know, you've got Philcom, you've got Converge in Philippines, you've got Super Corridor in Indonesia, you've got ALT Interlink in Thailand, etc., TM Time in Malaysia. By partnering with the telcos and being a support, not being a threat, not trying to compete with them because we are consuming their bandwidth and enabling them to sell more services, we found that to be a more reciprocal relationship. So we are supporting their country rather than trying to take over. And we're obviously in regional areas, so we're creating new markets for them to also sell their services in.
That makes sense. Sam, maybe?
Yeah, I guess a bit of a derivative of that. So JV partners, again, when you have markets, you know, in addition to being a smaller market, regulatory issues, right? Places like India or Philippines. So we rely on JV partners to help us not only establish the business presence, but pave the way into making sure that we penetrate some of these new and emerging markets. I do think maybe compared to some of the other panels here, we do have a slightly different product because we do need some level of scale before it makes our investment worthwhile. So I do think for the most part, there's enough markets in Asia today where we do have scale that we focus in on, like tier 1 cities, that we probably don't have as much focus yet. But I would imagine as the ecosystem grows through companies like yourselves growing into these other markets, that creates more demand. And then at some point, there would be that need, once it does get to the scale for a company like us to come in and maybe build a larger presence in some of these secondary and tertiary cities.
Yeah, and obviously connectivity is extremely important when we build those networks. So when we talk about the connectivity landscape, I think a number of other panels also before talking about it, but from an edge perspective, and also the build out in Indonesia, for instance, in Thailand. So do you invest yourselves or do you do this through partners? And how good is the connectivity today? How much development do you see? Because that in the end enables your business cases in the end. So do you stimulate that or do you wait? How does that work? Maybe Rafi.
I think if we can, I always try to see if we can find a better way to differentiate and be able to offer something that is different from the current market availability. That would be the best outcome that you want to achieve. But to reach there, you need to have someone to take that up, and you need to find that. And if you found that, then you should go for that actual build out to create that, so that you need to have an anchor. No one would just build between 2 data center points and expect the business to come. It will not work unless they have so much of deep pocket. But if you have a forecast or a way to do it, I'd say go for it. And we have Malaysia, for example, is blessed. Southeast Asia is an oil and gas rich certain locations. There are many right-of-ways that can be new highways instead of the roads, petroleum gas pipelines, railway track, and I think you have got these tracks coming from China down to Singapore, through Laos. So these will be new right-of-ways that would form backbones, and from there will be spurs into the new cities or the state capitals. So I see that these investments would happen, and and someone will take that up and connect these DCs. So to answer to your point, where possible, if you can differentiate and you find anchor and they are takers, go for build. If not, you do want to partner with the local parties and develop and slowly bring up new ecosystems and network connectivity. Again, I have to emphasize, while we would like to decentralize as much as possible, data in most of the ASEAN countries today is not decentralized. So even if you have an ambition or vision to put something up in Satun, it didn't happen yet. It has to, someone has to go there and be such a content puller to pull in, and then you start to decentralize. But it's getting there. I see that in 5 years, the landscape would have changed. It would not be Hong Kong, Singapore anymore. It'll be, your Kuala Lumpur, your JB, your Satun, your Rayong, your, Da Nang. That would be the landscape. And we will have a much more connected inter-fabric fiber connectivity. And all of us will be investing, and it will all become riding on our friends SDN, and it will be interoperable. That's the vision.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well is that the traffic patterns in each of these countries is completely different. So in Australia, you could say it's 60-40, 60% domestic, 40% international, and at night it flips as we're pulling in content as the kids come home. And you look at Thailand, it's 90% domestic. Vietnam, 80% domestic. So each country has its own differentiator, not only from policies, not only from working with partners, but then also down to its traffic and its flows, because the language is a different barrier.
Just to add on, the connectivity and access, super important. Again, unlike some of my friends here, we are kind of focused a lot more on retail. So again, on retail, the banking, the manufacturers, we kind of work with the partners to bring them on in, usually from the US and the European MNCs coming on to this part of the world. And then with that, there is always this request and demand about connectivity. And I mean, to the point, Singapore has about, 26, 28 cable system. So we do have about a majority, 16, 18 of these cable nodes in with us. And that solves a lot of this connectivity issue. And wherever we plan a node, a site, there's always a lot of ground study to understand who are the providers that's going around. And again, to John's point, there's a lot of partnership around. Scratch my back, I scratch your back, I'll bring you some customers. I'm not here to take away the market share, but increase the market share right there. Thanks, HGC is one of the providers for us as well. So appreciate and love the partnership that we have. Yeah, thanks.
Would you see satellite providers like LEO providers in the future as a means of connectivity that would be required, especially in remote places, to build edge networks? Or is it always fiber? Any take on that?
Look, when they get here, and if and when, obviously, they're coming into Africa and a lot of the other far out areas that have worse communication issues, they'll always partner with the incumbent telco first. So in Australia now, Vocus have done the deal for all of the Starlink. So anybody that has fiber, not necessarily, because these satellite providers, I don't know if you've seen one, it's the size of an esky. It's less than a meter by a meter. It's domed. It can sit anywhere, rooftop. It's quite inconspicuous. So really all they need is the fiber. When we get to the future edge or future satellite connectivity where they want to start streaming more services to those low-ordering satellites, that they may move content thing, but I think content will always be driven by land, not so much by the satellites.
Okay. Maybe other ideas or other thoughts?
Well, we do have a bunch of satellite operators as customers and partners as well. We don't really see them providing that kind of connectivity for the usage of, for some of the customers on the banking side as well. But they get involved in the shipping, I think more for the trading side. But majority of customers, I think, for us is still looking into fiber, which is a bit more stable and predictable. Yeah.
Good. Then let's look a bit more into the future. So where do you see edge computing developing, especially here in Asia? So if you look the next 3-5 years, where are we heading to? What are the big ticket items in edge computing you think, or from your point of view, we have to look at?
it's difficult to predict the future, but the best guess I would say, typically we talk about latency, right? Latency is a concern. I haven't heard anyone talking about latency today, but every time we start talking about edge, close to the user, it's short latency, but this is what is happening right now. But eventually, I think enterprise, we're starting about the cost eventually. You cannot just, to get a short latency and it costs you a lot, and you have to look at the return anyway. I see that at the end of the day, whether it works, whether it makes sense or not, it's all about the return, right? You have to drive your costs down, but at the same time, all the edge device, IoT device, right? The number of devices is increasing, so you are generating a lot of edge traffic, but at the same time, the bandwidth cost is dropping down, but it's not fast enough. So the demand will go up faster than the cost down. So eventually, it is a cost issue. So this is number one. And I would also like to see that there are some new powerful chips that are going to enter the market because of a lot of processing power at the edge. Though we have all the traditional CPU and GPU architecture, but now we start seeing some companies saying, I have a DPU now. So in order to do much more processing at the edge, in order to cut down the data transfer to the core, right? Because some data will generate where you produce and it will never send back to the core. So that will be the trend. I reckon more powerful machine, more powerful server chips at the end. And then at the end of the day, everyone have to look at the bottom line as well, whether it makes sense to do it or not.
Thank you. Sam?
I think you have to look at the behavior and the patterns of the consumer. And then from there, it'll give you an indication of where this market is going. So if you have developed markets like Japan, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, what that data requirement is probably driven more on AI, IoT. I mean, how many, I don't know about you guys, but other than your mobile phone and your computers, how many web-enabled devices do you have in your home? Maybe 4 or 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's probably going to be every single light bulb, every single light switch, every sensor, every door handle, you name it, and you could see how much data growth that's going to generate. Then you look at more of a development market like Indonesia, where still, even today, slightly more than half of the population have access to the internet, right? And so the digital transformation that a country like Indonesia is going through is just absolutely massive. They're skipping, the whole, 9600 baud rate modems and analog data transfer to going from a landline on copper all of a sudden to a web-enabled device where they can access just a plethora of data and information. And so when you look at a market like Indonesia, you could sit there and say this runway is extremely long in terms of not only where the growth is, but how much infrastructure is required. So I think, again, when you, as a data center operator like ourselves, we see these opportunities. So in a market like Japan, it's a slightly different type of a growth profile, but versus in Indonesia, where it's still just the basic fundamental digital infrastructure that we're trying to grow. But again, I think it's safe to say in this difficult economy with recessions looming and price inflation happening, it's a pretty good industry to be in. I think we're all pretty safe here.
Okay. Maybe Ravi, from your perspective?
Well, I think if I see in the next 5 years, I would say the landscape of submarine cable will change tremendously, not only because of the South China Sea scenario that we face, but also because of the demand of the decentralization, number one. So I would say from a perspective of a network enabler and a platform enabler for an edge to exist as a 2 megawatt or a 1 megawatt sub edge points, I'd say this will be exponentially growing. I also predict that with 5G and reorientation of the network of the MNO, because a lot of the mobile data is driven by, a lot of the user data in ASEAN is driven by mobile, which is centralized at 4G. But with 5G and 6G, it will be decentralized. Then I think the data will be localized as the processing power is needed locally instead of pulling back. So I'd say the landscape looks very promising for edge. from that point of view.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we are running slightly out of time, and we may look a little bit into the audience if there are any questions which we might be able to answer. Don't be shy. Okay, there are no questions, then I would like to say thank you very much, gentlemen. It was very informative. It was very nice having you today. Thank you, and thank you very much to our audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please join me in thanking Sharman, John, Eddie, and everyone else, and Thomas for moderating that. We mentioned a few of the markets that we're going to delve into in 15 minutes after a coffee break, so please go grab a coffee and come back where we'll carry on the conversation. Thank you.